Phyllis was just telling me that she's cold up here in the front, and I've heard some folks are warm in the back.
Everybody want to sit right here?
Is that the sun right there?
Oh, yeah.
You know the old, it's two Jews, how many opinions?
14.
And then two Jews, how many temperatures is the, right? But you know, seersucker is supposed to be a cooler material. That's what they say. I don't know for how many years at this point we've been having seersucker Shabbat at Bethel. It's been a number of years, but I do know we didn't invent the idea of seersucker Shabbat. So not so much in the sense of Shabbos, but at least in the sense of designating a seersucker day. The United States Senate has done that. That's absolutely true. Going back all the way to 1996, there's a United States Senate Seersucker Day. This year it was observed on June 9th. There have been a couple of years where it wasn't observed for various reasons, but it's an annual Senate tradition. All the senators dress up in seersucker, and a number of people in the House of Representatives as well. So June 9th this year. Now, if you were to ask me, I would say that July 4th weekend is more appropriate for seersucker than June 9th. June 9th is still a little early in the season, I think. But as Dr. McCoy might have said on Star Trek, those of you familiar with, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, you know, I'm a rabbi and not a fashion expert, okay? I also am not a Supreme Court justice, but I would like to spend a few minutes with you this morning thinking about that austere institution and some of its recent decisions. Now, I grew up in the 70s, and when I was growing up, the Supreme Court was, for the most part, staid, quiet, pretty boring, actually. 73 was the Roe versus Wade decision, so that was obviously a big deal. At that time, connecting a woman's right to an abortion to the Constitution itself. But aside from that, you really didn't read about the Supreme Court in the newspaper, certainly not the front page of the newspaper, and you rarely thought about the Supreme Court. It was generally understood as being, you know, kind of like an impartial body, an impartial institution, and it based its rulings, it was understood at the time, on research and deliberation and the expertise that the justices came to the court with, their knowledge, the wisest legal minds in the country. That was sort of how, at least when I was growing up, I saw the Supreme Court. And certainly when I was growing up, the court was not seen as a partisan, politically divided body, politically motivated branch of the government, as it is so often perceived of today. Now, in recent weeks, the issue that has come through the court that has garnered the most attention, obviously, is the abortion issue. But in my mind, there are three recent decisions by the court, three of them, abortion is one, that the Jewish community should be paying very close attention to. And I would argue the Jewish community should be a little bit concerned about as well. So the abortion decision came down on June 24th, and that's Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health. Probably very familiar with that decision. I'm going to come back to that in a second. But the other two decisions, one was the day before the abortion decision. That was June 23rd, and that was Carson versus Macon. Anyone happen to know what that case was about? It's a separation of church and state case where the court decided that a state-funded voucher program, this is in Maine, rural area of Maine, that pays for children to attend public school. Again, it's state-funded, public taxes, so intended for children to be able to attend public school, that could be used to send children to Christian schools. So that was that decision of June 23rd. And then the third case was June 27th case. So just this week, it was Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, where the court ruled that it's okay for a football coach, this is in the Seattle, Washington area, football coach to publicly lead prayers on the field at the end of games, okay? I can say he's not doing Kol Nidre, okay? Now, let me say first a couple of words about the abortion issue, because I think it's important for us to understand Judaism's general approach to abortion. And then I want to take a step back with you and think about the bigger picture that I see emerging about the court when you look at all three of those cases at the same time. So first, abortion. On the one hand, Jewish tradition teaches that abortion should not be equated with birth control. Okay, it should not be equated, should not be used as a form of birth control. It should not be resorted to frivolously or thoughtlessly. It is a decision that should be weighed and considered very carefully, very, very seriously. It should never be taken lightly. Okay. That being said, Judaism clearly does not believe that life starts at conception. That is not a Jewish belief, not at all. Judaism also does not believe that an unborn fetus, even in late stages, Judaism does not believe that an unborn fetus, even in late stages, is fully equivalent in terms of rights or halachic status, Jewish legal status, to a human being. There's a distinction that the tradition makes, not yet born, between someone that exists, that's been in the world already. So in Jewish law, it's not until a fetus is born, is out in the world, that it is considered a full human being. And it's clear in Judaism, going back many, many, many years at this point, that abortions should be permitted whenever a mother's health might be in jeopardy, and many authorities extend that to mental health. Okay? So if you're saying an abortion should be permitted when mental health is in jeopardy, that's creating a fairly wide window there, right? That's a fairly wide window. So in terms of the abortion issue and the Supreme Court's decision, the June 24th decision, it seems to me like there's a conflict with Jewish law there, right? And it's entirely possible, by the way, that you could see at some point the following case making its way through the court system. A Jewish woman who's pregnant and saying, I have a religious right. My religion, Judaism, tells me that I have a right to have an abortion. That's an exercise of my religious freedom. Okay? And if that case ever gets to the Supreme Court, I will be very interested to see how the justices rule, because it seems to me, and now here's the big picture. Here's the big picture. It seems to me that it's religion, and not just religion, but Christian faith, really, that has been driving at least these three Supreme Court decisions. The 6 judges who voted in favor of these rulings, 5 of them are Catholic. So Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, all Catholics. And Justice Gorsuch, who is Episcopalian, now identifies as Episcopalian. He was raised as a Catholic. Now listen, those of you who know me well, you know I'm a religious pluralist. Some would say to a fault, okay? You've heard me many times over the years from the pulpit. You've heard me say that I do not believe that Judaism is any better than any other faith tradition. I do not believe that. And I believe that a Catholic's path to God is just as authentic and true for him or her as the Jewish path to God is for me. But as a Jew and as a rabbi, my job's to worry about the Jewish community, right? And the Jewish community, to be safe, strong, viable, and healthy, it needs the wall of separation between church and state to be high and unbreakable. And if that wall begins to break down, and faith begins more and more to permeate public life, the public square, that is not something that's good for America's Jews. And when you take the 3 decisions together, the June 23rd, which is certainly breaking down the separation of church and state by, again, allowing public funding to pay for private Christian schools, June 24th, taking away a woman's right to abortion, and June 27th, allowing Christian prayer to be recited in public school setting. When you take those 3 decisions together, by the way, in a 5-day span, those 3 decisions in a 5-day span, the Supreme Court, I think, has eroded, chipped away at that wall that separates church and state. And I think, and United States a more Christian country in doing so. Now, we might expect behavior like this from politicians. I mean, you see it all the time. And for years, the wall between church and state in terms of politics has been under attack, and politicians more and more today use religion as a means to get elected to public office, and also, not uncommonly, as a driving force in their policy decisions and policy initiatives. Along those lines, by the way, also this week, Representative Lauren Boebert, she's from Colorado, she gave a speech in which she said, these are direct quotes, "The church is supposed to drive the government," she said. And she also said, direct quote, "I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk." She said that in a speech, okay? This is from a member of the House of Representatives of the United States of America. So you see it in politics all the time. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. But if you think about it, that is the job of the Supreme Court. The job of the Supreme Court is supposed to protect the Constitution from political forces. They're supposed to uphold the First Amendment of the Constitution, which says, some of you could probably recite it by heart, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." And when I step back and I look at these decisions by the court over the last couple of weeks, it looks to me like they have failed in that constitutional charge. I mean, that's the way it looks to me. The beginning, Rabbi Soroka and I were just talking about this, the beginning of the Torah portion this morning records this tense conversation between Moses and Korach, and just as Korach begins to lead his rebellion against the established Israelite leadership, we talked about this also in the Parsha class, and there's a phrase that appears twice in that, remember, Merle, in that conversation between Korach and Moses. First, it's used by Korach against Moses as an accusation, and then it's used by Moses to remind Korach that he, Korach, has crossed a line. The phrase is Rav Lachem, Rav Lachem. And Rabbi Soroka and I were talking about how should that be translated. In our Chumash, it's translated as, "You have gone too far." You have gone too far, Rav Lachem. And we might say the same thing to the Supreme Court this month. It should be a court that represents all people, all Americans, all faith traditions, with equal rights for all and equal respect for all faiths. That's what we hope to see. That's what we hope to find. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.